Hey, do you guys remember the 2DS? You know, the 3DS's little brother. He got laughed at and picked on during school, and whenever someone would look at him, they'd be all, "Hey, aren't you related to the 3DS? That guy is so awesome, I wish I was his friend." And then the 2DS graduated from school and everyone sort of stopped talking about him, and they completely forgot that he had even existed to begin with. I feel like that's sort of the awkward situation the 2DS found itself in. When it was first announced 3 years ago, it was a laughingstock across the internet. It was very confusing that Nintendo would even release this kind of hardware marketed specifically toward children. It was cheaper, it was safer for kids, and it was more durable. This was all achieved by removing the 3D functionality as well as straying away from the clamshell lid design. It was like taking the Ford Mustang, completely muffling the engine, and then filling the ceiling and floor panels with airbags. Then it kinda dropped off the radar and no one really even talks about it anymore. It's been years later and I got to try the 2DS out for myself, and the opinion that I developed from some time with it is a pretty different one. In fact, I believe the 2DS is better than the 3DS. I even traded my original 3DS in to purchase a 2DS. Now, I'm not saying you should do that yourself, but that's how convinced I was that the 2DS was a good product. Right away, you're probably asking me why, so let me go ahead and tell you what shifted me to using a 2DS instead of my 3DS. I did just say that you probably wouldn't want to trade in your 3DS for a 2DS. I had a pretty special circumstance that made me switch my system. First off, I didn't actually buy my 3DS. I got it by trading in tons of older games into my local video game store. I bought it used for $120 worth of credit instead of actual cash. Second is that it wasn't in very good condition. Because I'm Dr. Mod a lot, and modding is what I do, I didn't pick up the 3DS just to be my new handheld. It was also going to be my new project. I was planning on refurbishing it. I'm kind of an amateur when it comes to modifying hardware though, so the task was very daunting. If you've ever tried taking apart a 3DS or even a regular DS system, you'll understand. It's not an easy device to assemble once it's been broken down. I didn't end up really playing it at all because its physical defects just bothered me too much to use it. Hence, I traded it in towards the 2DS. Even the guy at the game store gave me this weird look. He said, "Are you sure you don't mean the new 3DS?" And I said, "Yes, I'm sure." Now let's get on with why I think the 2DS is better than the 3DS. To begin with, it comes with a charger. Sounds like a given, right? Well, maybe not as much as you'd think. The new 3DS model strangely doesn't come with a charger. From what I researched, it was a measure Nintendo took to help cut the price of the new 3DS model. Honestly, I'd rather pay that extra money and have it come with a charger than having to go through the additional step of buying one separately, especially when the new 3DS initially came out, because having to find a new Nintendo branded charger was more challenging at that time. The next thing that the 2DS has an advantage over the new 3DS is the placement of the SD card port. You simply just take off the cover of the port and insert your SD card. Simple, easy. As for the new 3DS, access to the micro SD card port requires minor disassembly. It's nothing too major, you just have to remove one of the panels, but why do we need this changed in the first place? I didn't have any sort of SD card problem on the regular 3DS, so why they tucked it inside the system is another odd decision. Those were some pretty simple things, but let's talk about some more radical differences between the 2DS and 3DS. One important thing to mention is that the 2DS is actually more comfortable to hold. Thanks to the lack of the clamshell hinge, the 2DS is instead a singular solid piece that has plenty of room for your fingers to spread out on. The 2DS is also a little more bulky than the 3DS. While this can also be viewed as a downside if you talk about portability, it's still a more comfortable system to use for a long period of time. As it was advertised, the 2DS is also more durable than the 3DS. While it does have a little bit of a cheaper feeling to it due to the rougher matte plastic that's used, the lack of a clamshell hinge is what the 2DS really benefits from. If you look around online for damaged or broken 3DS systems, you might notice that a lot of them have a broken hinge. This was also a problem found in the original DS models where the hinge would snap and the two halves of the DS would separate. It's essentially the Achilles heel of all DS and 3DS systems. But without that, the 2DS will be more likely to survive a drop than the 3DS. Many people will probably say that without the folding screen and the hinge, that the surfaces of the screen will get scratched up. This can be true depending on the person, but how is this any different from the original Game Boy Advance, or the Game Boy Color, or the original Game Boy, or the PSP, or heck, even your smartphone? If you care enough to not damage the screens of your other devices, then you shouldn't have any problems keeping your 2DS scratch-free. If you are still concerned about that, Nintendo does offer a low-price, soft carrying case that will help keep it protected while traveling. Of course, the other major change to the 2DS was removing the 3D feature. To be honest though, I found that was more of a novelty anyway. Sure, it did get improved on with the new 3DS, but I can't think of anyone who plays the 3DS with the 3D feature on constantly. I turn it on every now and then to see what a scene would look like. It's eye candy and it's really cool sometimes, but I don't really like using it all that much, especially due to the eye strain you'd get from the older 3DS systems. That was mostly fixed on the new model, but leaving the 3D feature active will also chip away at the battery quicker than just leaving it on the 2D setting. While we're talking about batteries, that's something very interesting that I don't feel many people bring up. All of the 3DS and 2DS models have roughly the same battery life. That's about 3 to 5 hours of gameplay for the 2DS, 3DS, and an extra hour for the new 3DS. The XL version of the new 3DS adds one more hour on top of that, giving about 3 to 7 hours of gameplay. But here's the kicker. The batteries all vary in size. The new 3DS XL uses a 1750 mAh battery, but the 2DS uses a 1300 mAh battery. That being said, you could buy a new battery for the 2DS with a higher mAh rating, and it should outlast the new 3DS XL easily without spending nearly as much. Back to other specs, the resolution of both the top and bottom screen are the same as the original 3DS system. In fact, all of the hardware specifications are virtually identical. The only things you're losing in this package is the 3D and the hinge design. You're essentially getting the same product at a much lower price. Now, it is true that you'll be missing out on the new hardware revisions that are on the new 3DS, but Xenoblade Chronicles is really the only game you won't be able to play. All of the 3DS games do benefit from the hardware upgrades in the new model, but you don't need the performance boost to actually play them. If this is very important to you, you're going to have to judge if it's worth the jump in the price. Something else I find important to mention about the 2DS is how it's been put together. It's a lot easier to take it apart now and replace the parts if you need to. No hinges have to be dealt with here, so everything is flat. Even the screen is super easy to replace because both of the displays are actually on one single LCD screen. The 2DS screen creates two separate images that are appropriately sized to the handheld. If part of the screen goes bad, you instead replace all of it rather than having to buy two separate parts. The parts are really inexpensive that way. The motherboard is on one flat piece. The faceplate and backplate are also flat. Everything in the 2DS is literally 2D. It's so much easier to disassemble thanks to that, since you won't have to work with any complex ribbon cables or parts like the 3DS. Not to mention, if you're interested in modifying the hardware, it'll be easier to make physical changes since you're working with mostly flat surfaces. Overall, the 2D build is much less of a headache for those who are into tinkering with their devices. Those were quite a few reasons why I ended up picking up the 2DS over the 3DS, but ultimately there was one huge factor to why I bought it. Any idea what it is? Well, if you don't have any clue, let me lay it out for you. The price. It's as simple as that. A new 3DS model costs $200 brand new. If you get a bundle that comes with a full game, it'll cost over $240 depending on the bundle you pick. The 2DS? $80. Brand new, with a download code for Mario Kart 7. That is an absolute steal. Sure, it doesn't have a hinge or the 3D feature, but what does that matter? It can still play all the games that the 3DS can. And aside from the 2DS logo, it even shares the same operating system. While the new 3DS may have some nice upgrades, it's still $120 more than the 2DS. You could buy two brand new 2DS systems for that price and still have $40 to buy yourself a brand new 3DS game to go with your system. It's low price, it's durable, it's comfortable, and it works great. If you want to start playing 3DS games on a low budget, or if you're just in it for the games and don't care about the 3D, the 2DS will be a great choice for you. That's all the time that I have left for today, but thank you for watching this video. What do you think though? Do you think the 3DS is still a much better choice over the 2DS? Post your comments down below and tell me what you think. I have to head out now though. Pokemon Sun and Moon will be out soon and I still need to beat Alpha Sapphire. Yeah, I'm a little bit behind. Dr. Modelot, out.